What's going on, everybody? This Afro Think Tank. Happy Blackout Friday, because ain't nobody buying shit if it ain't black. God damn it. F it. Plus, I did all my shopping already, so I'm good. Anyway. But, this is going to be an educational video because I'm getting sick and tired, all right, of both my ops, my ideological ops, and my ideological allies, you know, spewing out this goddamn false pseudo history, all right? All right, if I hear the word, when we was on Pangea, if I hear Pangea one more time in reference to human migration, I'm gonna lose my goddamn shit. All right. So what I'm gonna do is, because the problem is we got a Western education on geography. We got a Western education on history. So everything is oriented in a Western European style. So everything you view as far as history, migratory patterns, civilization is from the eyes of Europeans discovering it for the first time. All right, or finding out that it happened for the first time, right? So what I'm gonna do is reorientate you, all right, on human migratory patterns, on the original Aboriginal. Stop using that word, all right, for everything, all right? When you say you're African, listen, when you say you're African, that supersedes anybody's Aboriginal anything. That supersedes anybody's indigenous anything. If you are an African, you are the indigenous human being on this planet. You are the Aboriginal human being on the planet. That supersedes, outranks, and it's anything anybody else can call and say about themselves. Period. Right? That's why I'm an African. I'm indigenous to the planet. I'm an Aboriginal human being. Everybody else come from me. I can honestly say that there's no human being on this planet that I come from as a group, as a race. I know that. You know, I am the progenitor as an African. Right? And our story is amazing. It's never told. You want to talk about the Odyssey, the Gilgamesh? You want to talk about... No, the story of the black African is the greatest story never told. So I'm going to tell it right here in a way that you should be able to visually pick up what I'm putting down. Put this in your head. All right? And know this, because this is fact. This is truth. This is not pseudo history. This is not pseudo. This is what happened. All right? You can either accept the information and be better for it, or you can neglect it and remain willfully ignorant for your own, you know, ideological purposes. Anyway, tell me what you guys think in the comment section. Afro Think Tank, learn something, teach something. I'm out. What's going on, everybody? This is Afro Think Tank. Okay, so today I'm going to give you guys a migratory lesson on African people and our migratory pattern outside of Africa and how we got to North America. All right, in the South and Central America, because the problem is that a lot of us were not taught, you know, about our true history, or we weren't taught about deep history. We were taught white Anglo-Saxon centered history. All right, we weren't taught about Earth history. Earth has a lot of history. Okay, and human beings have not always been included in all of its history. You need to understand that, right? So when I hear people say that back on Pangea, they like to use the word Pangea and say that's how we came to the Americas because we walked over there when the land masses were connected. That's not true, and I'm getting sick of hearing people say it, right? Because when Pangea was Pangea, there was no such thing as a human, okay, at all. We didn't exist. Though that place was millions of years, that landmass was millions of years old, right? Hundreds of millions of years old. Okay. By the time human beings have came around, the way the continents are sitting, as you see now, is pretty much how they were sitting. All right. We are recent. We're recent creations of Earth. All right. So the problem is, guys, we have a Eurocentric version. We have a Eurocentric view of history based off what the European has been teaching us, right? So I want you to pay attention to how big this map is kind of accurate, right? This is the most accurate map depicting the Earth and the size of the countries and continents and whatnot, all right? And what you do, the problem is most of us black people, we look at the world like this, right? Because this is Europe, guys. This is Europe, right here, all right? This bit right here is Europe, all right? This part, the green part at the top, is Europe. And this is what they call a continent, right? But if you see in many of my videos, you see I call this a place a peninsula, because Europe is a peninsula, all right? This is Europe. This is where white people are from. Hey, white people, all you white people, all you European Americans, all of you come from here. This is your homeland right here. Not any place else on the planet, right here. This is where you're from. This is what God gave you. This right here belongs to you. That is it. This place right here. All right. Now, if you notice how small that place is right there, right, compared to Africa. Look how big Africa is, all right? And this right here is Israel. You see here? Israel, this is where everything is. The way you see the little green and little desert, you see how small this, all the Arab talk, this is where the Arabs are. This small place right here, Arabs. This is where you see Arabs. This entire planet, all the Muslims, the Arab Muslims, all of the Arabs are located right here for the most part. This is their little spot. Arabs are nothing but a bunch of mixed mulattoes, mixed between the Africans who traveled to Asia, right? The Asians who traveled to Europe, right? And the consequence of the three different people groups created these mixed mulattoes that we look at as Arabs, Persians, Iraq, these people in the middle, they're mixed, right? The same racial mix as Latin Americans. Latin Americans are a combination of Asians, all right? Because Latin Americans are Indians who are really Asians who walked over to America from here. You understand? This is how it happened. But the problem is, the European educational system has everything going from here to here, this direction. From Europe to America. From Europe to America, because there's beginning of the transatlantic slave trade and the beginning of the British empiring, all right, where they were coming to the New World to kill all the indigenous inhabitants of this land, right, and take all of the resources back to build their white Wakandas in Europe and America, right? That's what they did. So all of Europe's success is a product of the rest of the world's resources and peoples, all right? So when these people from this little place right here, right, from this little place right here, when this person from this little place right here came, stole all the stuff and people and destroyed everything, right? They claimed history for themselves, and history became Eurocentric, and we only think about history from people traveling from here to here. That's why you got people who don't know anything about history talking about where are the boats, how did they get over here, and this and that. Well, you guys are missing the greatest story ever told in humanity, right? The story of the African and him leaving Africa, going to the Americas. So when you say you're an African, you are really saying that you are the indigenous, aboriginal human being on this planet. It supersedes and outranks and is more prestigious than any other aboriginal or indigenous designated group on the planet, period. You can't get no prideful, you can't get no more number one, you can't get more rooted than that, all right? African, all right? Now, let me tell you the real story of history. First of all, let's look at this map correctly, because this is even a Eurocentric depiction of the map, even though the size of the countries are relatively more towards this size. Now, just so you see when ships sail from Europe, you see when you gotta sail around, you see how much money it costs to go around Africa. You see how big Africa is? Imagine having to go from here, all right, Europe, with your ships having to go all the way around these choppy ass waters, all to the, and then you gotta do all of this. You gotta do all of this, all right? You got it. And then when you get here, you got the craziest, toughest, shark-infested waters, right? You got to deal with pirates. You got to deal with terrain. You got to deal with distance. You will know how much money, how many lives it costs just to get goods to India. Just to take your stuff from India and go to Asia, huh? When they were world conquering, these white people were stealing from all of this. Do you think they wanted to take all the goods they were stealing from all of this? Listen, all the stuff they were stealing from all of this, all the stuff they were stealing from all of this. You think that after stealing and losing British or white peasant lives and hundreds of thousands of rubies and diamonds and monies and pounds, stealing the indigenous people stuff, do you think they wanted to sail their ships all the way around here? All around all of this just to get back here? Absolutely not. That is why there is a shortcut. That is the Mediterranean. And to control the Mediterranean, this is the European side, this is the African side, and this is, that's Israel and Egypt. So this is why Palestinian lives will never matter. As long as white people still gotta take their ships around Africa, and they have a choice between going around Africa and going through that Suez Canal, they gotta make sure they control the greatest superhighway Earth has ever seen and ever have. The only other place like that on the planet man had to create itself, and that is over here, the Panama Canal. We had to do that, and look how thin the Panama Strip is landmass comparatively. All right, and how hard it was for black people, Africans, to do that. Keep in mind, the greatest earthworks on the planet is still done by Africans. And after we did that, we went over here and rebuilt white Wakanda after they finished killing each other during their European war that we call a world war. Okay? But this is how you should be looking at Africa, like this. This is how the map should truly be turned. And this is the direction of the planet. All right, now this is how you should be looking at the map. This is Africa. This is the world. We all hear me say Africa is the world, right? So the way migration actually happened, right? First, humankind, right? This whole planet, this whole part of Earth right here, there are different type of hominids, right? Combining and mixing to create what we now call human beings, right? That create us. The black African came out of this because of the different hominids that were also very genetically different here, because it wasn't just us. We're talking about thousands of different kinds of primates over millions of years, competing and combining and merging to create what we now call human beings, us, the first humans, right? After that, the first group migrated, right, and came down the bottom here, right, down the bottom. And what we did was we followed, if you know anything about animals and nature, there's migratory patterns of animals. In Africa, the migratory patterns go up and down. All right, up and down, the wildebeest, up and down, the greatest migration of animals, up and down. Pay attention, this is going to be very important. Up and down. So human beings followed the pattern of animals, great migrations up and down throughout the year, right? Wherever the animals went, we followed. That's how we started to travel out, right? Because we followed our food to where they were going, and we went with them because they were going somewhere, right? And we also followed the coast where we fished, right? We call this the global south. This is what we call the global south because Europeans has placed it at the bottom, right? So everything is called south, right? But in fact, we're at the top, all right? So human beings started this way. These are your black African ancestors, right? Traveled here. That's why if you look at the Arab, this place, original, these people are black African. This is Yemen right here. Currently, America is attacking this place because this is a strategic location to get goods and services through this slither of land. Whoever controls this controls trillions of dollars, trillions and trillions of dollars of goods and commerce. You control the world. Whoever controls this spot controls the world. All right. That's why Palestinians' lives don't matter, because they're in the way of trillions and trillions of dollars. All right. So, and it's also prime real estate as it is on the Mediterranean. Imagine all the hotels you can put up on this pristine water. All right. Just letting you know. All right. So we traveled here, right? We traveled here. If you look at all the places here, all the original people are black looking, right? Then we get to India, the Indus Valley, right? The Indus people, the great civilization that created India, right? Were Africans who traveled by boats, keep in mind. Not only did we travel by land, but we were sailing. We were traveling by boat, skipping along the coastline, following the fish and following the migratory animals on the land all the way around, because we follow our food, right? That's why the black Africans, Indians are here. These are the ones that's being discriminated against. These are the Indians are the untouchable. These are the Indians that's on the lower caste, right? And if you go down here, we got Sri Lanka. Those are very dark Indians. They're really just Africans. That's why it's crazy that these people are racist, because they're literally our cousins, right? Then you got these other set of islands here. That's where you got those black Africans who are untouched for 15,000 years, and they about their life, and they will kill you if you try to land on the islands. Pitch black. They have genetically have not modified. They have not intermixed with other Africoid groups of people or other African people for 1,000 years. So these guys are a pure example of the Africans that left here on the first or second migrations out of Africans, right? And if you go around, this is where we go to Thailand. Now we're starting to get into the darker parts of South Asia. This is where y'all like to frequent, right? Thailand, Cambodia, right? Dark Asians, because these are our people. These are black Africans, right? Following the migratory patterns around the lush, fertile lands of Southern Asia, right? On our way to Micronesia, Australia, and Melanesia, right? That's why if you look at all the dark-skinned people here. But what happened was these Caucasoid people, these Europeans who came from up here, after they had to suffer, right, through the winter, they started migrating down here with their death and destruction and destroy culture, right? And so all the people down here who had a culture of abundance, right? All the Africans, people came out here who had abundance, right? These guys had abundance. If you notice, the people that had abundance, they have all the old ancient artifacts. They have all the old cities, villages, towns, cities, all the ancient old stories, all of our ancient old stories. And then you get to the back end of China, those original black, all the coast, all the ancient, and these people sailed, right? And then you get to the Polynesians, and you get to Australia, all of this. Black people, these people, even though they're genetically different, because like I said, African people are humanity. We have more genetic differences between each other than other people, because white people in Han Chinese, right? Because you got to get used to looking at the map like this. White people in Han Chinese only make up a Costco sample. There would be one race. They're a small microcosm of humanity, all right? Small microcosm of humanity. We represent all of it in our diversity, right? We're African, right? So all of these people up here are black or black adjacent. That's why when you look at the Hawaiians, right, who continued on, made it here, right? And then they kept going. They kept going and they made it back to the Americas. So there were two migratory patterns. You had the African people, right, who left here, right, followed around here, walked here. This is the true story of humanity. When you say African people, everywhere you go, everybody's black. This is why. This is the actual truth. The genetic story has already been told. This is not a lie. This is not pseudo. This is real, actual in real life. All right. This is the story of humanity. Out of Africa went this direction. This is the story of humanity. Africans this way. We went this way. Right? That's why you look at the Aboriginals. They know they're black. They know they're African. Yes, they've been gone from Africa for a very, very long time. They're part of the first group of very diverse Africans who left the continent, and they made it there. Right? So even though they're genetically different from Africans vastly, that's due to the fact that they had an isolated genetic group that left 50,000, 75,000 years ago, while the ones on Africa were still spending that time intermixing and becoming different genetically modified black African people groups, right? And then from there, right, and then you get the Polynesians, Melanesians. These guys sailed. We sailed the entire freaky. You want to talk about the Odyssey, the Great Odyssey? The story of the African and his traversing Earth is the goddamn greatest story ever told, right? So the Polynesians actually made it. No, you got Hawaii, which is right in the middle here, right? And then they made it. Some of them made it down here. Some of the Polynesians made it here. You understand? So the Polynesians, if you look at the phenotype of Polynesians, they look very African-like, right? The Samoans, the Hawaiians, those guys, they look very African because they still maintain their genetics that they got from Africa, because these are Africans far removed. These are our ancestors. These are our genetic children, if you so to speak. Our genetic children, our Africans spread across the world. These are our accomplishments, right? These people are every different group of people on the planet is an accomplishment of an African, because they're all Africans who have accomplished the ability to survive and adapt in that area in order to further spread out humanity. You understand what I'm saying? So there were some Polynesians that made it here. They populated South America, but at the very same time, right, our African brothers and sisters also around Asia, right? They didn't just stay here. There are other migratory patterns, because here in Eurasia, migratory patterns goes this way. It goes left and right, left and right, left and right. So the superhighway of food is up and down. So up and down, you would traverse your say out of Africa. Animals follow what? They follow water, right? Because they need to eat. So they follow water. They follow where the greenery is. So wherever life is, right? So if green comes, the bugs come, the birds come, the bird comes, the lizards and snakes come, lizards and snakes and grass and trees and flora and fauna, right? Wildebeest and human, right? Lion, tiger, bear, oh my. Superhighway up and down. And this superhighway, left and right, right? Left and right. So because it's left and right, right? We populated all of this, but we also went this way. We went around Asia. We went around. And like I know some of you guys heard in goddamn school, right? I know some of you heard it, that Alaska, right, and Russia are connected. So we literally went from Africa, right, traveled all the way, became Asian, right? Our phenotypes changed Asian, came here, walked here. This how it happened, guys. We walked this way, and we sailed, guys, but we walked this way. Follow the animals. Where are we now? Where are we at now? Oh, we're in North America, right? We're in North America. Native Americans. That's how we got here. The problem is, you guys been looking at the map like this. Y'all been looking at the map from a European perspective. So you only view going from here to over here. That's why y'all can't put two and two together. Y'all forget the migratory pattern of humans goes the other direction. And it explains everything. Because if you look here, great civilizations, all this dark, melanated. Everybody from here is black, dark skinned, melanated, Asians, Asiatic, Africoid, all the original people, black, dark, travel this way, all the way. And then some crazy group of Africans managed to go the final distance and make it here, the Polynesians. It's possible. There's a last genetic connection of Polynesians. There's a group of tribe that's right here at the bottom. Because the thing is, the ones that came from this way, the ones that walked over this Bering Strait, they populated and dominated, right? But the thing is, there was their first group of humans that came over here and they populated this area, right? The first group of humans. But there was another migration of what we call Asiatic people that came over this Bering Strait as well. Y'all got to remember, there was more than one migration into the North Americas. The first group was a part of the earlier African, out of Africa group that already populated the earth and made their way over this when you could just walk over that. And they have populated all of this already, along with the Polynesians that made it from Polynesia and Hawaii and those islands over to here. So you had two earlier migrations of human beings that left, right? And they had already created civilization for thousands of years, okay? Before the second migration of humans out of Africa came, right? Traveled around the same paths, the same animal paths, the same trails that have been baked in the people's traveling group, the same trails, the same superhighways that have turned into actual highways and beltways and things like that now, because those are the same migratory patterns that we have been walking for thousands and thousands of years, millions of years, right? So when that second group came, they actually fought and defeated this first group of Africans that left Africa that populated this place. That's why if you look at the recent group of who we consider ancient civilizations of South and Central America, they will tell you that a lot of the megalithic structures that they built, they didn't build, even though they are ancient. If you are European and you're looking at them as ancient, and you didn't get educated and you're not a historian, you didn't realize that that group of ancient Europeans that you see, the ancient Native Americans that you see also have ancient history, and they also ran into and populated areas where there were also other ancient people groups there thousands of years before them that built advanced civilization. You guys just don't understand how deep history is, right? But all of these people are a product and a success story of Africans successfully populating the globe on foot and in ocean. That was Africans. Now, we're all really one race. You heard that before, right? We all really one race, right? So that means we're all really just Africans. Everybody on the planet is just an African who has had to adapt to an environment they found themselves in over tens of thousands of years, over hundreds of thousands of years, based off the environment they found themselves. Now, the European over here, obviously, they come from a place of struggle and strife, right? Therefore, they have adapted the ability to survive in struggle and strife, right? And, and then that's the thing, right? So you just gotta, that's real history. That's the migratory path. Yes, technically, in the real world, everybody is just African. They just look different because they had to adapt to the environment they found themselves in when they left and had to modify themselves because of, circumstances, right? And if Asians and Europeans would technically be one group of people genetically outside, they don't have that many genetic variables and differences. And if we already know that these people ain't nothing but a bunch of mixed mulattoes between the three groups that were developed after we modified ourselves, we really ain't fighting for nothing but just some bullshit, right? But it's not us, because Black Africans already know that. That's why when every one of our children from any place on this planet, right? When our children from any place on this planet comes to either an African land, back to their motherland, their genetic, historical, earthly motherland, or they visit any group of their genetically African or Black mothers and fathers in any land they reside in, that's why our children get treated like they are children, and we treat them with love and respect, and we put our arms, and then we got our arms open to them, and we embrace them, and we hug them, and we love them like only a mother and father could love their children, even if their children are ungrateful, deceitful, backstabbing pieces of shit. We still love. We are the only human beings on this planet that legitimately loves all human beings despite how shitty they treat us. And no matter how shitty they treat us, only loving parents could do that. We're talking about genetic lineage and parentage right here, right? But if you go to anybody else, any other group on this map, any of our children, there are various different degrees of respect and love and acceptance you'll get depending on, their environment and how they find themselves culturally, right? It all makes sense, right? So if you are still pretending, right? Reason why you're mixing up real history, deep history with recent history and pseudo history. You need to educate yourself. I just gave you the best shit you can ever have right now. Reorient yourself. History doesn't go from Europe to the Americas. All right, humankind didn't just get advanced and go from this place to this place. All right, we've been doing this shit for a long time, going the other direction. Asians and Africans first. Europeans are the new kids on the block. Keep that in mind. Europeans are the new kids on the block. They're discovering stuff we had already discovered, shared more than once, more than twice. We discovered these lands like 2-3 times before these Europeans started exploring the world and tearing things up. And that, in fact, is the truth. Anyway, that's all I got to say. Hope you learned something. This Afro Think Tank. Learn something, teach something. I'm out.
Free Sudan! Boycott diamonds and gold! Free Sudan! Boycott diamonds and gold! We most definitely cannot forget about the people of Sudan.
Thanks for watching Afro Think Tank. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And follow me on Substack and Patreon for more content. Remember, it's Pan-Africanism or nothing.